Alright, so this may be more questionable if Bioshock 1 is considered a horror game, but given much of its atmosphere and visual design, it felt more worth including for this year's marathon. My only experience with the Bioshock franchise was Infinite back when it first came out, and I was like 12 years old, I think? So, understandably, I felt no fear or horror back then, and I felt the game was so smart for what it did. Whether or not I was right on that is a topic for another day. But if nothing else, then the intro to Bioshock 1 is something I feel earns it at least a seat on the console, despite not receiving the title of horror game. But before I get into the specifics of the game itself, I actually need to warn you all to only play this game on consoles. The PC ports of both the original game and the remaster are beyond garbage, and even if you can resolve the obnoxious headache-inducing issues upon launching the games, you're likely still better off playing it on console. And what are these issues, you might ask? Well, to start off with, when you first open the remaster, its default resolution says it's 4K, but it's a type of 4K that took up both of my monitors, and actively resized every single window on my PC, including the widgets on my OBS of all things.
Oh no. Oh no, oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Hang on, I need to screenshot this for... Oh, what the fuck? It happened!
Which makes it especially confusing and frustrating is that when I tried a little bit of Blue Protocol, it also launched in 4K, but it was kept to be one monitor. It looked good, and it didn't fuck with anything else on my PC. Then for the original, it thankfully was not as bad, but it's still atrocious. It doesn't even like being launched in any resolution that isn't a tiny ass window. But if you're more okay with that, like I mentioned with the Witch's House, then that shouldn't be a problem at the very least. Although apparently if you hit Alt plus Enter several times, you can resize the game to fit your monitor properly. But the technical aspects of the PC port aside, I actually have quite a few positive things to say about the game. And the first thing to mention is the iconic introduction. From the plane crash that already establishes some foreshadowing from the get-go and sets the energy the game has, to timelessly stunning fly-through of Rapture, to the genuinely perfect horror scene of your very first splicer. All of it is done to perfection, and is one of the best intros to a video game you can possibly do. Then there's all of what the game does to be a horror game as well as an action game. I think it's pretty easy to tell what makes a game much more geared towards action than horror, but Bioshock really wants you to stew in that horror for the first hour or two before things go wild. Like with the introduction of your first splicer, with the lighting never letting you get a consistently clear view of any one detail of them, their victim, or the environment. It puts you in that very high stress and dangerous situation with virtually no knowledge whatsoever. Then pretty much every single area in the game, for, at the very least, the first half, has beautiful environmental storytelling to show you not just simply what might have happened during the collapse of Rapture, but all these micro-stories of various individuals going through it. You don't even need the audio logs to know that some people got the really rough end of the stick.
Oh, someone had a horrible fucking time on this toilet.
The usage of sound as well, with all the enemies around you, both Splicer, Big Daddy, and Little Sister, also plays a major role. But the further on you go and the more enemies you encounter, or the more frequently they appear, it sort of becomes just voice line soup, but I'll get into that in a second. As I said, Bioshock is largely an action shooter, as well as a horror game. Normally I wouldn't really like an action shooter, especially one with the pacing of Bioshock, which is breakneck to say the least, but the game has a ton of variety of what you can do for each encounter. You've basically got abilities like a hero shooter with the plasmids, you can affect the environment in several ways at any given time, and the gun selection feels decent enough, even for someone like me who really only wants to stick with the shotgun. Speaking of the shotgun, if you end up having trouble with the big daddies, fill yourself to the brim with electric buckshots. If you stagger your shots right, you can keep those big lugs perma-stunned as you gun them down. Oh, and you also have access to hacking in this game, for pretty much anything from the vending machines to security system to robotic enemies. This is done through a pipe puzzle minigame that you have to complete before the blue juice leaks out, and honestly, the fact they have this system at all, and that it affects so many things, is genuinely great. It allows for a lot of really interesting opportunities to affect the environment around you. But the problem is that there is just too damn much of it. You genuinely cannot go more than 10 feet in any direction of this game without having something to hack. And considering the benefits you get from doing so are so important, big discounts on items or heals, saving on medkits to not bum rush turrets, cheesing encounters, not easy to remember security systems, huge amounts of money from safes, it feels as though that you're putting yourself at a major loss by not hacking. Perhaps it's just the optimizer in me, but because the opportunity cost I felt when it came to hacking, and with how frequently I had to do it, it just became far too overwhelming when coupled with the rest of the insanely high energy gameplay I was going through. And honestly, overwhelming is a word I think best describes Bioshock 1. Or perhaps overstimulating. You already have the hacking issue as I described, and the pacing of actual combat is genuinely like you're on a real-ass roller coaster, so you're given short moments to breathe within levels. But the thing that takes it over the edge for me personally is the sheer volume of voice lines you'll be hearing at any given time. While there are enemies around, regardless of you being in combat or not, each one has a very wide range of voice lines they will consistently be spitting out, which does make them appear to be far more real, but the frequency at which they do that, at the volume they do, and then multiplying that by however many enemies are present, it gets incredibly overwhelming very, very easily. But if you like short-ish bursts of incredibly high energy, then perhaps this is right up your alley. I will say as well that the difficulty of the game is honestly quite nice for the most part. I played the game on normal difficulty through a combination of the game's relentless nature as well as my own ineptitude in shooters. I was constantly fiending for more ammo and more health kits until near the very end of the game where I both was taking such little damage that mattered and was getting so much money I could afford whatever I wanted. Then there's the matter of the plot, and honestly, I find it rather hard to talk about considering the game is probably best remembered not just for the introduction to Rapture, but also because of one major reveal that happens in the latter third of the game. And just by the ending for the Witch's House recontextualizes the entirety of you playing the game, so too does this reveal within Bioshock. So to keep your experience pure, I will refrain from describing it. That being said, the actual build-up to that reveal via the aforementioned environmental storytelling, but also the little threads that come from the main plot itself and the audio logs you can pick up throughout the game, is honestly genius. I had tried to piece together these threads as I came across them, and noticed some odd outliers here and there, but as it turns out, I was pretty far off as far as what was actually going on. And honestly, it was rather intriguing seeing the battered and broken pieces of the politics within Rapture between Andrew Ryan and all the bigger players mentioned such as Fontaine or Atlas, the guy who's been guiding you. All the while, Andrew Ryan progressively acting more and more like a dick to you for what seems like very little reason other than you're listening to Atlas. But that's all I can say on that front. Overall, Bioshock 1 was a very enjoyable and memorable experience. There's a reason that the game is still loved by so many people this many years later. The PC port is unfortunately horrible, so I can't tell you how much it costs on console, but it is absolutely worth getting one way or another. Although, just be aware of how much energy the game throws at you and how much it expects back. But that's enough of my rambling. Now would you kindly go and play the damn game and see for yourself?